Many years ago, after living in a fairly large city, we had the opportunity to relocate, and it was to a rural area. As we began to look for a place to live, a house to buy, we found this house up on a hill in the middle of nowhere. By in the middle of nowhere, what I mean is I could look down the hill and see the top of one little house, and then down as I looked through the valley, about a mile away, I could see another. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. And we moved there. As we moved there, I looked around. It had a bit of acreage with it, and I looked around the yard because one of the things that I knew was that I wanted to have a garden. I had had little gardens here and there, or potted plants where I would raise some tomatoes or something, but I wanted a really true garden. And the people who had been there before had not had one. So it was wide open as to where I could dream would be the best place to have it. I had this memory that I carried with me from as a child, where my maternal grandfather, after he retired, had a garden of about an acre behind his house. And my memory was of him getting up every morning and going out with the tiller and working that ground and going back and gathering the vegetables. And I just really wanted to have that. So as time came for us to prepare the land, I took my tiller out and I began to work the soil. It had never been cultivated in this way, so working it was quite an endeavor. It took not only tilling, but throwing rocks out and getting rid of all of those things that were impediments to growing a good garden. We got it tilled, and I knew that as I got a little deeper that I hit something. And then I realized that I was on top of the old driveway, the old church driveway, so I couldn't go any deeper. I had to use what I had. We planted a few plants and put out some seeds, and we had a very modest harvest that year. But I was proud of it. I was very, very proud of it. So as the fall came around, and with all of these big hickory and oak trees and various other trees, as they dropped their leaves and they died, I took them over and I piled them on top of my garden. And I took my tiller, and sometimes the leaves would be this deep. And I took my tiller and I got in there and I worked those leaves under, and I went and bought compost and I put it in there and I worked it under. The season came around and we planted plants the next spring. And we sowed seeds, and our harvest was better. But I knew it could be even better. And I knew that I would have to continue to work the way I was to make it do so. And then that neighbor down at the foot of the hill who had a chicken coop made a valuable contribution to my garden. And so I tilled it under. And the next spring, we set out plants and we sowed seeds. And we had this wonderful, wonderful harvest. It just kept giving and giving and giving. And it was so good. And I was so proud. Sowing seeds and setting out plants are a fun endeavor for me. I enjoy that. I like to see what comes of the fruits of my labor. It's a wonderful thing to have happen. So when Jesus tells us parables about sowing seeds as being the image of the kingdom of God, that fits for me. He says all you have to do is go out and sow seeds, and there's some of those seeds that when you sow them, they just go wild. They just go wild. Mustard seeds do that in His image. They go wild. They go everywhere, and you just can't even stop them. What a wonderful image for the kingdom of God, for what it means to live in God's life. That's what the kingdom of God means, is living in God's life. What a beautiful, wonderful image that is. And it gets carried out, and I think it's for us a wonderful invitation of how we live our lives. We, my friends, are sowers. We are sowers. We are casting seed. And we do that here, but we do it in the world. I think one of the really special and great ways that we cast seed is by telling stories. You know, that's the essence of our Scriptures. The essence of our Scriptures is not for religious or political leaders to grab a text out of it that supports our own personal agenda, however valuable or evil that may be. That's not what the Scriptures are about. The depth and beauty of the Scriptures are in those rich stories that are told over and over throughout the Testaments. The Testaments to God's life in our world. Ezekiel today in the Old Testament is a storyteller. He's a prophet. And it's his role to tell the people of the Hebrew people who are now in bondage in Babylon, under Babylon, to retell them all of their stories. And to tell them in such a way as to say, the stories anchor us, they give us hope, they take us forward. And this, if you listen to these stories, if you keep doing this, this will happen. And in today's gospel, reading, he's telling them about how the head of Babylon has gotten rid of the king that he liked so much and has brought in this puppet. And how he must help to bring about change, how they must change it. It's a story, and it's a developing story, and it's a story to come. But the stories you and I tell are those stories, those rich and beautiful stories that go back to creation. And they come up through the prophets and David and through Jesus and all of those people and Paul. What beautiful, rich stories that come alive as you and I tell them verbally and live them in our lives. This, my friends, is how we sow seeds of the kingdom. And at the core of those stories are stories about relationships. And that is how we spread seeds too. We tell those stories of how God has been present in our relationships, those who came before, and in our lives. And as we do that, and as we tell those stories, you know what happens? We build relationships. And we build the kingdom of God. And we do it by sowing. Thank God it's by sowing. Because there's one thing I learned about myself growing a garden. My passion is in preparing the soil. And my passion is in sowing the seeds and planting the plants. But my passion is not in watering the garden every day. And it's certainly not in pulling the weeds. But that's the core of this story. This core of these parables is that Jesus says to us, sow the seeds. We'll take care of the kingdom. We will take care of the kingdom. So you and I today are invited into this wonderful life of telling the stories and building relationships and sowing the seeds of what it means to live with God. And what a wonderful story it is. Because it's a story filled with love. That's what's at the core of our relationships. So say our prayers today, sing our hymns today, and go out of here and go sow some seeds. It's not hard, but oh, it's such a wonderful thing to do. Amen.